Like here, we've got a hard line here, which is fine for this drawing. That should disappear, and this should all be value that's separating these things, right?
Yes.
Now, here's the other thing. I'd get a little more information in here. What you don't want is anything to go really flat and there's no information in there. And you want the information to be value and, color and temperature, right?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Who is this?
Oh, I just randomly found something online, like on Google. So,
What I would do is I would find some reference of somebody, because you don't want to make it up, right?
yeah.
Just find some reference to somebody in that same point of view with the lighting you want to use. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And what's good about that too is it starts to tell you how to use, starts to train you how to use photo reference that isn't apples to apples, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then you're gonna have to wash in the planes of the hair and all that kind of stuff because most of this stuff is gonna go away. These like, you just got to remember it's not going to be linear. It's going to be completely painted, right?
Yes.
So what I would do, kind of like you guys watch the video I put up, right?
Yeah.
So, I would wash in sort of my flat areas. Then I'd start separating the big values. Make sure you have photo reference has some nice value shifts. Then I would go in and start, putting in the values in the eye socket and all that kind of stuff. Upper lip is probably a little darker. Bottom lip, and again, no line work. This is going to come out into the light. Then you're probably going to have a shadow under here. So you got to figure all that out when you're painting it. Yeah.
Yes.
And finding a 3/4 view of somebody should be pretty easy. But don't go and get like some fashion shot unless it's well lit, because those kind of shots tend to be the lighting is deliberately blown out and soft, and you don't have a lot of good shapes and values. Yeah.
Yes.
Questions?
Not really at the moment.
Here's what you're probably going to need to do. Have you used gouache before?
Nope, never.
Okay. What you're probably going to need to do, everybody's probably going to need to do, and maybe this is the week where we do a midweek meeting. You're probably going to need to come back to me during the week and set up a Zoom meeting or something if you're having problems. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. From this point today will be short because I'm just going to look at these and make the comments about the drawings. Right after this, man, today, I would treat this just like a class day and just go in and start this thing. Yeah?
Yeah, okay.
And what kind of paper are you going to do it on?
Not sure. Probably just like watercolor.
Okay, that's fine. That'll work. You could also use, if you guys want to, use this to try Bristol board, you could do that. If you do Bristol board, I would just tape it down. Okay.
Okay.
Bristol board can work fine for gouache. It's probably not going to take quite as much of a beating as watercolor paper will take. But if you look at things like Alex Ross and people like that who do full on gouache stuff, he's using Bristol board. Yeah. You know who that is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't he the guy who did was it Kingdom Come?
I think so.
Like where he drew like painted like the Justice League in sort of like this realistic sort of way.
Look, I like this guy a lot because to me, I'm not a comic book guy, but to me, he's just an old school, cool illustrator.
Yeah, I actually went to like the Fullerton Museum and they had some of his like artwork there.
Originals?
Yeah, I think so. I also saw like apparently he was like in his young age he was doing like Peanuts as the Justice League.
Oh, really?
So it's like
this is Alex Ross. This is all gouache. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's doing it. I think he does it all on Bristol board. Right? I think his stuff's really fun. Total comic book nerd. Anyway, I like the stuff he does. He does a lot of these things where he sort of puts all the characters, like a bunch of characters into, see if I can find one. he puts all the characters into like one image like this. Those are fun, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he has them all like floating and stuff like that. And it just looks really cool.
Mhm.
It looks really, when he does these things like this, they just look really epic.
Yeah.
Like that. And I just think it's cool he's doing them all by hand with gouache. You can
Yeah.
see it looks cooler, to me anyway. It looks cooler than digital.
Yeah.
All right, Alen, you know what you're doing, yeah?
Yes.
What
Yeah,
you
now
might
I
want to
know.
do is a real quick, and I just do this real quick, and you could even do it with watercolor, a real quick value comp, so you know where your shapes are. If you work out your shapes with your value comp, you're going to have a lot more success because you're not going in
Yeah,
and trying to
okay.
figure it out when you're painting. And then I would do a really quick color comp, but real fast. I wouldn't spend a bunch of time on them. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And you could just print, again, you could just print this out, some small shrunk down versions of it, and just work right over the printout. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You sound like you're asleep.
No, I'm fine.
Hmm?
I'm fine. I'm
One of our
okay.
students this week just got an internship at Nickelodeon.
Oh,
Wow.
nice.
I'm super excited.
Yep. Hopefully
Oh.
their stuff gets in.
We'll see. I mean, she's a really good student and obviously talented
Oh, yeah.
and a nice person.
Mm-hmm. Gonna have some coffee.
Hmm?
Is that coffee or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to wake up, man. I'm just so out of it.
Yeah.
Elizabeth's assistant was just conversing with her. All right, Elizabeth. Waylon. Yeah? Your mic's off.
I'm still working on him.
Yeah. Okay. So what now when you put down, and I like this one because I like doing this a lot. You're gonna have. Is this on the paper?
This is on it's on watercolor paper.
Okay, that'll work. Work out whatever you think you need to work out here, but you've got to remember you're going to lose tons of it anyway.
Okay.
And then you're going to do a little bit. I think it's almost inevitable that you're going to do this no matter what. It's called finding it in the paint. And what that means is, especially when you start going opaque, sorry, you will start to sort of reshape things a little bit and kind of correct things in your drawing a little bit. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And that's also a good thing to start learning. Now it gets, when you're first doing it, it's probably a little trickier, but it's something that, you sort of need to learn how to do, because whenever you're doing a painting, whenever you're doing a drawing, if you notice, you can go, oh, I think this is done. And then you forget about it, come back to it next day and you go, ah, crap. And you find some little things you got to correct. It's the same idea. It just rolls into the painting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So then the second part of this is you're going to stretch this after you get it drawn, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Because what that's going to do is, like we talked about, it's going to sort of set the drawing into the paper. Okay. And then you'll stretch it, blah, blah, blah. But, and then the third thing is you've got full value under here. So when you wash that, when you go into the different sections, here's how I would do it. I would go in, like on his face, let's say, and pick maybe, it could be the lighter value, or it could be like a mid-tone value, but still transparent, and wash it right over his face, like the whole flesh tone value. And what you're going to see is then it assumes all the undervalues, through that transparent paint. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it's also, what I like about that, it's just a nice way to, I like painting that way. It's a nice way to sort of get the painting kick-started very quickly, right?
Mhm.
And like his shirt, I do the same thing. Let's say it's a denim shirt. I'd find that probably about a mid-tone, that color, right? that feels like denim or whatever, that specific blue. Same thing, I just wash it right over that area. And I just go through the areas and sort of block in the big colors, and you're gonna cover your image very quickly. Then I would start working into it.
Okay.
And I could start going, I'd probably start going back into my darks and start knocking my darks in and then work up to lights. It's kind of a little better to go dark to light with an opaque medium. Yeah.
Okay.
And also this week, if you get this washed in and then you kind of go, oh, what should I do from here? Contact me, because I want to walk you through this.
Okay.
Okay. I want to make sure I'm walking everybody through this because we're only once a week. And I can't, usually in class, we would just start these and we'd spend the day doing this, and I'd feel comfortable with where you guys were. Obviously, I can't do that, right?
Mhm.
So I like to break that apart across the week, where when you have a roadblock, then you come and talk to me and we can just Zoom and I can, kind of walk you through the next process. That way you're not getting stuck week to week.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll make sure that I'm really available this week. Okay. Because I'm trying to get all my nonsense out of the way, like my taxes and all that crap.
Okay. I have a question for the skin tone.
Yeah.
What colors do I use for the skin tone?
What I usually use, and look, there's a million ways to mix skin tones. What I usually mix is I start with, for this guy, because he's a white guy, I would start with yellow ochre.
What if you don't have yellow ochre?
You don't have yellow ochre? What do you have?
I have primary yellow, Senegal yellow. That's it. That's all I have. And then I have. Okay, I could buy yellow ochre.
I would get yellow ochre. To me, it's a base color.
Okay.
The other colors you can work with, but I would get yellow ochre. I think yellow ochre and burnt sienna are just something, at least for me, I need those two colors. I like those two colors. But what I usually start with skin tones, this kind of skin tone, is I'll go yellow ochre. I'll start there. I'll hit it with a little bit of burnt sienna usually, and just a touch of red, and then I'll build it up with white.
Okay.
Now, in the case of
Wait,
this,
when you say build up, what do you mean?
when I start building up my flesh tones to the light, I'm going to start adding white to that.
Okay.
What you're doing with opaque media is you're basically starting with your darker values. In this case, I'm saying, maybe because you have a value drawing here. Then I'm going, well, you might want to just wash a mid-tone over it because the values are going to assume the darks. So now you've immediately set up a dark and a mid-tone, and then you can start working towards your lights. As you work towards your lights with opaque media, you're thickening up the paint as you go. Because you're going to need to cover the paint underneath it, right? And then when you're mixing the mid-value flesh tone for this guy, I probably wouldn't add any white into it because it's going to be transparent. So I'd probably just kind of go a little yellow ochre and some burnt sienna. Sometimes you need red, sometimes you don't need as much red, that kind of thing. And then I just wash that over, and I wouldn't put any white in it yet because you're going to use the transparency to sort of adjust the values. That sort of like we do with watercolor. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then you let that dry. And remember, you guys, unless you're doing a wet into wet thing, let it dry. Okay. And then be very conscious of that, especially as the paint gets thicker. Be very conscious, like we talked about, where if you're going to put down a thicker swipe of paint over it, that you're boom and throwing it down over it and then leaving it. You don't want to keep reactivating the paint underneath, or it's going to just turn into mud. You guys understand why it turns into mud, right?
Yes.
You're just getting colors in there that you didn't bargain for. Okay, any other questions?
With how you were talking about the Bristol board, is that also a cotton thing or is that paper?
Bristol board is and there's and the reason, by the way, you want a fun fact about Bristol board?
Okay.
Why is it called Bristol board?
It's named after the person who made it.
No, because the paper makers would, and this is like a couple hundred years ago or whatever, the paper makers would take their best papers and they'd send them to Bristol, England to be combined to create Bristol board.
Oh, okay.
So it's Bristol, England, right? But what it is, and that's why you get plies. Okay, so you want a heavy ply like a 4-ply or whatever. Strathmore makes a really nice Bristol board. It's basically a really heavy paper, right? And it's sheets of paper that have been combined, you know, pressed together, however they do it. And that's why it's like 2-ply, 3-ply, 4-ply, right? It's a really nice surface. You can get a slightly like vellum, you know, textured surface a little bit, or you can get it, I think it's called plate finished, and that's really smooth. You might want just a little bit of tooth to it. You don't want too much. And then I don't think they make much Bristol board with a heavy tooth. That way it'll pick up the paint a little bit, right? Like Bristol board that's like plate finish is really good for pen and ink and stuff like that. So you could use Bristol board, or you could use watercolor paper, or you could use illustration board. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, the thing I don't like about illustration board is I don't really like drawing on it very much. That's just me. Also, if you get illustrated, I don't know if anybody cares about this, but if I'm going to talk about this stuff, I might as well go down the rabbit hole. Mostly what illustration board is a very good sheet of paper fused onto basically chipboard. You know what chipboard is, right?
Yes.
Okay. Which means it's probably not archival. Now, a lot of people tell me they don't care about that. I think you should, but some people don't. And if I'm just doing whatever you call it, exercises or whatever, I don't care. Strathmore also makes it an illustration board that's really nice, but I think it's just one pressed. It's pressed, I think, 100% cotton rag paper. So I think that's probably archival. It's also a nice illustration board. Okay. Now, just because I don't like drawing on it doesn't mean anything. Like you might love drawing on it. Illustration board takes tons of abuse, you know, because it's pretty weighty. And if you're going to get it, don't get the really thin stuff that like bows and all that stuff. Get the reasonably thicker stuff. I don't know. I don't usually get the really thick stuff, but I just get the kind of standard weight of it. Okay. And you'll see it, you know, there's some that's really flimsy, and then there's another step up that's pretty flat and nice. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then again, you can get a plate surface. I would not get a plate surface illustration board. It tends to bead a little bit at first, you know, because it's got a hard surface. They put something on it. And then, but if you get the kind of standard surface, which has just got a little bit of texture to it, that takes washes and all that stuff really well. And there's also, if you want to look into it, there's watercolor board, right? Which is kind of like illustration board, but it's got a watercolor surface on it that's designed to take watercolor, but it's rigid, which is kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And then you're not going to need to do a value comp because this is your value comp, which is another reason why I like doing the drawing. I like doing the drawing underneath, especially like when I'm designing things, or even if I'm not, because I can just sit there and play with the design with my pencil and sort of get it all worked out, erase things out, and go, I don't like that. I'm going to add a backpack to it, or I'm going to add a squirrel right there. I want to erase that out. And it's not erasing necessarily correct the drawing. And sometimes it is, because now I'm doing a very finished drawing that has to be set up for the paint. So I like to work all that out with pencil. And then by the time I tend to add value anyway. So it's a natural process for me. And then when I get done with this thing, it's like, okay, that's solid. I've already got my value comp because all my values are in there. I've got all the drawings worked out. I've looked at it in the mirror 100 times and all that kind of stuff, and got it all sort of balanced and even. And now when I wash the paint over it, just like I'm saying, I wash those mid values over to whatever, and it just goes boom, dark, mid value, bam. And it also gets me excited about the painting much faster, because I'm not going through that awkward, you know, when you're first blocking in a painting, it just doesn't look like anything. You know what I mean? This looks like something right off the bat and this is grisaille. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about that. So when you have a full value under anything, you could do this with anything. Okay. Like with oil paint, I tend to do it with acrylic paint, right? And then I have this undervalue painting under there, and I start washing oil over it. You're just doing it with pencil. What kind of pencil is that, by the way? Prisma?
Oh, I didn't have I went to go try to find a
Derwent?
yeah, but all I had was a Coley race.
That'll work. Yeah, that'll work fine.
Because I didn't have anything that was terracotta. And then
You understand why I tend to like to use, what color is that? It looks like a sepia or
It's just
something.
brown. It just says brown.
Okay, brown's fine.
But I wanted to. You wouldn't use Prismacolor, right? Because that's
You could.
oil, and that won't. Oh, you
use
can.
Prismacolor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I
fine.
didn't have anything that color anyway. I didn't
What you
have-
don't want to do with Prismacolor though, is like I keep it light like this. I would anyway, but because Prismacolor, if I built something up too with a lot of that material on it, Prismacolor's wax.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
what
going
I.
to start to create a resist,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want to do that. There's not really a whole lot of reason why I would go, if I was going to go, like if I want to go into a section here and go, I want to really darken that up. I mean, I can darken up the pencil just by building it up a little bit. And then also when you stretch it, you're going to kind of wash some of that off. It's going to suck some of it into the paper and it'll be fine. And then you're going to go opaque over it. Now, another thing is like if you're painting in like a Moleskine sketchbook, like I do sometimes, whether it's acrylic or gouache or whatever, if you're doing like, whatever, location studies or whatever, which I like to do in my sketchbook, it'll tend to bead at first a little bit because that paper is not necessarily, it's not really designed for water media, right? But then what it'll do is after it does that, it sort of washes, I guess it washes the size or whatever's on it, the finish on it. And then it'll start, and then also once you put down some media down, whether it's acrylic or gouache, and you sort of wash in that first, few washes, it's going to stick to itself now a little more because now it likes to stick to itself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you get a paper, don't necessarily negate the paper all the time and go, oh, I can't paint in this Moleskine. It's like, I love painting Moleskine sketchbooks. But I know that at first it's not going to accept the media the same way. And I'm not trying to accomplish the same thing as in that book that I am if it was a finished illustration or something. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But I think there's a big value, and I hope you guys do this, because you could just get a watercolor book, like a little watercolor book for this, and start going out and doing, after this class is over or now, whatever, start going out and doing studies and things with these media, whatever one you like, and start, putting it into practice, because it's just like anything else. You got to do it and do it and do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now we've talked a lot about methodology. So now once you got a methodology, that will speed up your process if you start doing repetitive, repeating it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And again, your sketchbook's great for that because you're not going to sit around and overthink the drawing and overthink the subject matter and overthink it where, you're making one painting every 4 months. That's not really good miles, right? But if you take that sketchbook out, I'm probably going to do it today, and just go paint some people from life and stuff, or I like to go out and paint landscapes and all that, just in my sketchbook, the little ones, just little paintings. Man, those got so much value, man. You know what I mean? Even after you've been doing it forever, because I've been doing this forever, but then I'm on this sketchbook rabbit hole right now, and it's like leading me all these new places. It's like pushing my skill set up. It's like I'm setting up things where I'm forcing myself to do things that I don't normally do to sort of push myself out of my comfort zone. It's such a great tool. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
No matter where you are, how good you are, or how long you've been doing it, doesn't matter. That's always a good place to go work things out, whether it's drawing or painting and color, right? And then if you're looking at things from life or whatever, you're learning color, right? And hopefully you're not afraid to make a bad painting in there, because we're all going to make crappy paintings. This is how it works. Okay. Any other questions?
No, not right now.
Okay. Confident?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is starting to feel a little, where's this from?
Hello.
What?
This isn't from anything actually.
Okay, I think it'll work.
It's just a sketch.
It's what?
It's just a sketch of a boxer.
Say that again. Oh, a boxer.
It's just a sketch of a boxer.
Okay. So it's like your own thing?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Now, okay, same thing. Just make sure, and I think you're going to be able to easily get some form in the anatomy. That's pretty easy. Again, just know that we're going to obliterate the line. You want to, obliterate it fairly slowly, right? So you kind of get your landmarks in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to create, depth in these eye sockets and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And then remember your shadow values, like here, that's going to get a little darker. If it's upper lit, which it usually is, this is going to go into the light. You're going to get a shadow cast under here, and that'll start to define the lips, not line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then planes of the hair. This is a down facing plane right here, up facing plane here. That's how you got to start looking at everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Questions?
No, not so far.
Have you used gouache before?
Once technically, but it's been a while.
Okay, so same thing here. You're going to kind of want to start washing this up and then building up to opacity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of paper are you going to use?
This was on a watercolor paper.
Okay, that'll work. And then you're going to stretch it.
And then I'm gonna what?
You're going to stretch the paper, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go. I do a value comp and a color comp, just little ones, really quick, just to make sure you got it worked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the value comp, by the way, you could do the value comp in digitally. It doesn't matter. It's just a black and white pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that I don't care if you guys use, do digital. Okay, so this is Cassandra. Where are you at?
You can ignore that. It was I didn't mean to submit this thing.
You say it again?
I didn't mean to submit this. This is another project.
Oh, okay. So what are you going to paint?
I was gonna paint the boxer one just so.
Oh,
I
okay.
could-
Okay. I didn't realize it's the same person. Okay, good. The boxer one will work better.
Yeah.
Robert.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I took a picture in the bad angle.
That's all right. I'd say, okay, so you're gonna use some value underneath it to start it, like Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would get that worked out. I mean, you're starting to work it out. Be careful with this kind of thing. Like here, where it's sort of going, it's going light to dark, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be, and you don't have to put all the value in it or whatever. You can just sort of get it rolling. But I might kind of put that mid-tone all over the whole thing and then go to my dark and then my lights. Here, if the light's up here, the ear will get a little bit of a cast shadow. Make sure you get a little of the ear information in here. The hair, it's going to get lit. There's probably a little more cranium back here, but that could be a stylization thing. I tend to darken up this hair behind because it's going away from the light, right?
Yep.
I would put, a little bit of his sideburns there, whatever. Here, these are sockets. So there's got to get some value inside those sockets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you got an eyelid here. Eyebrows. So you can just build it up a little bit. You don't have to get it completely perfect or anything.
Okay.
Because you're going to find some of it in the paint. So what you need to learn, I think, and then you're going to get a little bit of a shadow value under his lip here.
Okay.
And then this is going to turn into a shadow value, so on and so forth. And then this could kind of come down. You don't want to have a hard line there. And just build it up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
God, there's something I was just going to say and I forgot it. What kind of paper?
Oh, watercolor.
Okay, good.
Since I got it for got it from Blick when we got all the stuff.
Perfect. Watercolor paper works great for this.
Yep.
And you're going to stretch it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think you guys can see the stretching thing's important, right?
Mhm.
And it's not just for final presentation that it comes out nice and flat and even and clean. It's also when you're working, you don't want your board, you don't want your paper warping, and also the part of the biggest part of it, actually one of the biggest part of it to me is that I got that drawing, I soak it with that drawing in there, and it eliminates the dusty stuff on the drawing, and it sucks in part of the drawing a little bit, so it kind of fixes it to the paper a little bit. So I'm not going to have a bunch of problems with smudging and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, we talked about this before, but you don't want to use you wouldn't want to use a Mitsubishi 10B pencil because it's so soft. It's just, once you hit that with water, it's going to want to smudge all over the place. So I probably wouldn't go past a 2B probably for this kind of thing.
Okay.
And then it just depends on what kind of pencil you use. I usually use a Derwent terracotta. It's just usually what I use.
Mhm.
And a lot of that washes off when I stretch it, which is what I want it to do. And then again, sucks into the paper. So it's like fixing it to the paper without me having to spray fix it. Because if I spray fix it, the spray fix is also going to want to resist the paint, right?
Yeah.
Plus, I don't want anything, if I'm working on a nice surface like watercolor paper or Bristol board or whatever, I don't want to modify that surface at all because it's made to accept this kind of media. And it, like, especially with watercolor paper, it washes, it throws the washes down really nice on that paper. So I don't really want to put a barrier on there that's going to kind of change that a little bit, right?
Oh yeah.
Because otherwise, why am I using like a really beautiful paper?
Yeah.
And some people, man, they'll go, and I get it. They'll go and buy like really nice, like handmade French watercolor paper. And the stuff is really nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's expensive, but it's nice.
Mhm.
And Arches makes a really good paper. I like Arches. I'm trying to find Turner Gray. I found one sheet of it and I still have it, but it's hard to find that.
Nice.
The only company I know that makes Turner Gray is in England, and you have to order it from England. Okay, you have any questions?
I don't think so.
Like right here, think of this. You got an eye socket here and here. So you can use that, because your values are going to build up, and that's going to give you form in the face, right?
Yeah.
So you want to think about that. You'll get like a dark pitch right there, usually right there. You'll get some in here, and I'll just kind of start to knock that in a little bit, just so I can start to get a little bit of, so the eye isn't sitting on the surface, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're treating today like a work day. I'm hoping you guys are just going to go work. Again, normally we'd do this in class, but I can't. So everybody's going to start working today, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, you guys, I'll let you go. And I expect to see you during the week if you need help. Yeah, or starting tomorrow, whatever. Okay?
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you guys.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too.
Thank you.